All right, Patty, I'm going to hand it over to you so we can jump right into this awesome content.
All right. Lovely to see all of these introductions rolling through the chat. Thank you guys so much for making time for this today. We're going to be talking about the best and the worst of nonprofit newsletters and how you can write emails that fall into that first category of being the best. I'm really glad all of you guys are here, and I'm just curious to know who has sent out a nonprofit newsletter in the last 6 weeks. You can just put a +1 in the chat if that's you. Nice. Nice to see all those plus. Great. So everybody is actively sending out their newsletters. Another request, this was from Jordan. If you want to drop your subscribe link to your newsletter in the chat, that would be great. We love to get your newsletters to stay on top of what you guys are putting out there. So if you want to share those links in the chat, that would be awesome. All right, so I'm Patty. This is an extremely goofy photo of me. I worked as a nonprofit professional myself for over 10 years and then decided to start my own consulting business to work with multiple nonprofits on their marketing. So work with them on the way that they tell their story online. I used to live and work in Nepal for an organization whose donor base was primarily in the US and Europe. So email was one of the most important tools that we had for communicating with all of those supporters who were thousands of miles away. Basically, all we had was electronic communication to make people feel something for a place that they had never been and people that they had never met. So in my time at this organization, I learned a lot about how to write emails that people want to read. So I get this question at every webinar. I just want to make it super clear. You will indeed get a copy of these slides that we are going through. This is going to be emailed out to everybody after this presentation. So rest assured, you will have a copy of this. Another thing that I just want to quickly mention is, yes, I am happy to meet with you one-on-one to go over your newsletters if that's something that would be helpful to you. So we offer something called free office hours at my organization, and that's where you can sign up for a one-on-one slot with us. You get our undivided attention for an hour. You're not sharing that time with anyone else. And we can talk about whatever you want. So you could show up and say, here's my last 5 newsletters. Will you read them and tell me what you think? Whatever your question might be, we can address it. So just wanted to put those quick notes out here at the beginning, and then we can jump in. So I'm curious to know, you can add your answers to the comments section. Why does your nonprofit send an email newsletter? Like, why even bother with email newsletters? Why are we talking about this particular form of communication? To stay in contact, stakeholder updates for engagement, raising our profile, reaching a broader audience, timely updates. These are all great answers. Update news, highlight sponsors, share impact, news of our work. I see someone is a membership organization, so the newsletter is a benefit of membership. This is great. So yeah, asking for donations, an excellent reason to have an email newsletter, right? To do some fundraising, to inspire people. So I'm seeing a lot about engagement, right? Like, newsletters are great for keeping people engaged with your work, keeping them informed, keeping them inspired, keeping them wanting to give to you. These are excellent, excellent answers. So one thing I want to point out about this particular medium of email is this quote that I love from Pat Flynn that says, "Email lists and websites are the only 2 things that you can own on the internet." The rest is just rented. So social media algorithms are always changing, and we're finding ourselves having to pay more and more these days to reach our desired audiences on those social media platforms. And so right now, it's estimated that only 10%, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, maybe only about 10% of your followers are going to see your organic social media posts. So email is the way to be sure that you can contact your supporters directly in a personal way, no matter what those social media giants decide to do with their algorithm, with their platform. This is our way to ensure that we can stay in meaningful contact with this powerful tool. So, unfortunately, I see a lot of organizations not really using email to its full potential, and that's what we are going to chat about today. I do want to make something clear before we jump into all these examples. We're going to be looking at real nonprofit newsletters because concrete examples, I think, make conversations like these really stick. I could tell you these abstract concepts of do this, don't do that, but I don't think those words will really come alive unless we are looking at actual examples of things done well and things done not so well. And so that means that I'm going to have to bring up examples of what not to do. And I am presenting those examples here gently with kindness. I just want to say that creating an email newsletter is difficult and it's time consuming. You know, we're all doing the best we can out here. We're all nonprofit professionals who are doing a lot with very little. And I'm not trying to shame anyone by putting an example up of what not to do. This is advice that's meant to be helpful and not hurtful. So I think every nonprofit out there is changing the world in wonderful ways. And the reason that I'm giving all these examples of what not to do is because I want to make sure that your email newsletters are doing your work justice. So please forgive me for the examples I give of what not to do. Okay, so we're going to run through my top 5 tips of what not to do and what to do instead. So tip number 1, the worst emails use too many big words. I see this all the time in the nonprofit industry. These emails tend to be very dry and professional. They're full of industry jargon, of insider terms that nobody uses outside of this particular nonprofit. And they're riddled with acronyms. There's abbreviations everywhere that might seem very familiar to you as a nonprofit, but to those of us who are not on the inside of your work, it can feel like alphabet soup. So here's an example that an organization sent out. This is from a few years ago during the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And I know it's not super easy to read that text, so we'll zoom in a little bit here. This is talking about the work that happened in a particular country when the COVID shutdown first started. I want to highlight one particular sentence here. The whole email is kind of like this, but government support for this education group, so this is talking about how schools are closed. Government support for this education group has so far consisted of distributing self-learning materials, textbooks, and audiovisual technology. Put a +1 in the chat if you have used the phrase audiovisual technology at any point this month. I'm not seeing any +1s. I'm seeing the word no, thank you. What about self-learning materials? Has anyone ever used the phrase self-learning materials at any point in your lifetime, perhaps? No, seeing a lot of no's. Okay, so we don't talk like this. So why would we write like this? I want you to use a conversational tone in your newsletters. I want you to shoot for a 6th grade reading level. There is a tool that you can use to analyze text that will tell you the reading level. I'll go over that in a second. I put it I put this text in there and it came back at a 14th grade reading level. I don't really know what 14th college is. That like you're a sophomore in college at that point if you're in 14th grade? This is really, really advanced insider language that we don't need to be using in our newsletters. Let's keep our tone nice and conversational. Let's make sure that we're describing things the way we would if we were sitting at a dinner table with our friends and family and saying, hey, here's what's going on. I don't think we would ever describe things this way. Okay, so this is the tool that I mentioned, the donor centricity and readability tool. This is totally free. It's provided by Bloomerang, which is a company that offers CRM for nonprofits. And basically, you can put any text in here. It's going to analyze it for two things. One, it's going to tell you that reading level. So again, my recommendation is to shoot for 6th grade reading level. If you can get around there, like 7th or 8th grade, awesome. But definitely lower than high school. We want to keep it super simple, super easy to consume. The second thing that this tool is going to tell you is how often you use you-centered language. So it's going to compare your use of you words to we words. So how much are you addressing your reader versus talking about yourself, which is another great thing we're going to get into in a second. So this is an excellent tool to use. I see a great question in the chat. Do donors consider this to be talked down to? I don't think so, not in my experience. I think this is like talking to a friend. Again, this is how you would talk if someone was standing in front of you. If you were at happy hour with someone, if you were at dinner with someone, if you were at a dinner party and you just met someone, you wouldn't probably launch into a speech about self-learning materials and audiovisual technology. You would talk to them like just using regular conversational English. Okay, if I could ban the word infrastructure from being used in any nonprofit communications, I would do it. This is a word that we do not use in our everyday speech, and it is a word that is overused in the nonprofit community, and oftentimes people don't know what we're talking about when we say infrastructure. So let's use simple conversational language. So by comparison, the best emails are going to use really simple language. They're going to avoid that industry jargon. They're going to aim for a 6th grade reading level, and they're going to use a conversational tone. Let's see how this looks in action. So this is an email that I really liked. And again, this is talking about the same period of time during that beginning of the COVID pandemic when things were shutting down. And listen to how this sounds compared to what we just read. Rachel was forced to shut her business down when COVID-19 hit. Thanks to your support, she took up farming. 5 months later, neighbors are lining up for her vegetables. So this is talking about how there is a famine happening in this area of the world and how this wonderful woman named Rachel is doing her part to basically fight the food scarcity. So people are going hungry in Kenya, and Rachel is growing vegetables for them. This is pretty easy to understand, in my opinion. Like if I had met Rachel and I was telling you about it over brunch, this is probably what I would say. I'd be like, there's this amazing woman named Rachel. Like, get this, like her business was shut down. So like she decided to become a farmer. Like this is how I would say it. So this is how I want you to write in your newsletters, exactly the way that you would talk. So when I put this through that donor communications tool, this came back at a 5th grade reading level. All right, before we jump on to tip number 2, just a couple of quick questions. What's a good synonym for infrastructure? That is a great question. I think it's going to depend on what exactly we're talking about. We can get into more specifics later. And so this is really about telling a story. Yes, we are going to talk more about that. And I'm curious about the spaces between each sentence. We're going to talk about that as well. Great questions you guys are having. Okay, so I think the worst emails don't tell a story. They use too many statistics. They assume that you already know why your support is needed. So let's take a look at this actual email that I received a few years ago. This says, end 2020 on a grateful note. As the year comes to a close, we want to take a moment to thank you for your generosity this year. Let's head into a new year as a stronger community than ever. Donate to this organization's operating fund today. Can anyone tell me what this organization does? Do any of you feel they operate? I love that. Do any of you feel compelled to give a gift to this organization right now? Do you know if you were to give $10, do you know how that would make a difference in the world? No, this is not helping us at all, right? This is not telling us a story. This is assuming that we already know them, remember them, know exactly what they do. This was not a box within a larger newsletter. This was the letter. This was the whole thing right here. So I want to encourage you to tell stories rather than just say, hey, we're here, we have an operating fund, it needs money, can you give to it? Talk about what it is that you're doing in the world, talk about why it's meaningful, tell a really good story. So yeah, this highlighted again in case I'm hoping my screenshots are easy to read for you guys, but just in case they're not. So remember that you are not the only organization sending emails to this donor, and don't assume that they remember everything about you. This is where stories can really come in handy. And I'm curious to know just from you guys, how many of you receive email newsletters from exactly one nonprofit organization? How many of you are subscribed to just one newsletter? How many of you are, it looks like maybe we have one person, great. How many of you are subscribed to maybe 5 or 10 or 15? If you have a rough estimate of how many newsletters you're subscribed to, you can throw it in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of 5, 10, 4 to 5, 8. I don't even know how many, a lot. Close to 20, impressive. I'm probably around the 8 to 10 mark myself. Too many, you guys are hilarious. Yeah, so we're getting a lot of communication from a lot of different organizations, and sometimes it's hard to keep them all straight, right? So if we're getting these really short messages that just say like give to our operating fund, like sometimes we can't even remember like who are you again? What is it that you do? Why should I care that you do the work that you do? Also, if they're full of acronyms, like give to the CCU today, like what is that? I don't remember what that acronym stands for. So telling stories can really help avoid relying on those shorter statistics heavy, acronym heavy type of messages. So the best emails are going to tell a great story. They're going to focus on one individual if you can. We as human beings, we interpret the world through story. And so it's really, really helpful for us if we can wrap our head around one person's perspective, as opposed to trying to understand what it's like for thousands of people or hundreds of people. We can get lost that way, but one person, putting ourselves in one person's shoes and following their story, that's really, really powerful for us and a great way to get information across. So we want to draw the reader in with a compelling tale. Here is an example of an email that I think does this well. This is from an animal sanctuary, and they're telling the story of one donkey. So if you don't work with people, that's okay. You can still tell the story of one individual. And basically, this is how it goes. For many of our donkeys, they've had it pretty rough by the time they arrive at our facility. Patches was no different. A few months before we got him, Patches was dumped at a kill pen where he was neglected and mistreated. When he arrived, he was literally dying of starvation and malnourishment. We immediately rushed Patches to the hospital for treatment. At first, no one thought he would make it, but with the team's expert care, they were able to begin to convert his energy source back to carbs and begin his healing process. Today, Patches is gaining weight and his hair has started to return. He knows the sound of our voices. He loves neck rubs and tasty treats. Because of you, Patches will enjoy a lifetime of all the love and care he deserves. Thank you for saving Patches' life. Okay, same question as the previous email. Can anyone tell me what this organization does? I want to give them all my money. I love these comments. I'm guessing you have a pretty good sense of who they work with. They save animals. They do animal rescue. Great. Do you know how a $10 donation would make a difference at this organization? Does anyone feel compelled to give them a gift? I think we've already gotten some yes answers in the chat. I want Patches to live in my house. Same. I am obsessed with donkeys now. Yes, we feel compelled, right? This is a story about how this donkey was saved, this heartwarming story of now there's this sweet animal who loves neck rubs, who's getting all the love and care he deserves. We're invested at this point, right? This is what a story can do for us in a way that that short donate to our operating fund type of email does not do for us. So think about the types of stories that you can tell. I think I saw a really great question in the chat about how do you tell stories when you need to respect the privacy of the person involved, and we don't want to other a struggling group. We don't want to sort of exploit their hardships for our gain. I think that's a really great question. I think there's a couple of different ways that you could do this. One, you can sort of like tell a story that's not one person's story. You've sort of like taken elements from different stories and created like here's an example of what we see, but this is not one person. This is kind of like a story we made up based on details that happen all the time in this community. You could tell the story from the perspective of someone who works with this community. And you can focus your story on transformation. So we don't want to just say, oh, boo-hoo, look at this population. They're so terrible. Don't you feel bad? Don't you want to give us money? But tell a story where we put our community members in an empowering light and we make them the hero of the story. So look at this person's story. They had terrible struggles. They were able to pull themselves through to the other side thanks to supporters like you. This is the type of transformation that's possible when we believe in this community. Join us in helping make these stories of transformation more common. That's what I would recommend for those of you who work with populations where privacy is a concern. Okay. Just wanted to note that this email about Patches, it has a 68.8% open rate. I don't know if you're familiar with your organization's open rate, but the industry average for nonprofits is usually around 20 to 30%. So this is showing that people really love stories. They want to read them. They want to consume them. All right, moving on to tip number 3. The worst emails use we-focused language. So they talk a lot about ourselves. This is understandable why we as organizations do this. We want to highlight our successes. You know, we want to show you that we're accountable to you. We're doing what we said we would do. Like, we're trustworthy. You can believe in us. We're out there making the work happen, making the world a better place. But this can come across as really self-centered when it's too much about ourselves. I want to show you how this looks in action, because it can make it seem like we're doing fine and we don't actually need your support because we're great. So here's an email that I received. I've done my best to remove the organization name, so I hope it doesn't read too awkwardly. But basically, this says, all of us here at this organization are thrilled to share with you what makes this organization so special to our community and beyond. We're a community treasure that manifests our town's values and spirit. We're a fan-supported resource that helps make our community what it is today through both its programming and many events. Do any of you feel like this email is relevant to you? Are you glad that you now know that this organization is a community treasure? What about donating to this cause? Do any of you feel compelled to make a donation to further this organization's mission? Seeing a lot of no's in the chat. What's your role in this organization? Do you feel like you have one? No. So this is the problem. They already sound so successful. Exactly. They already have everything they need. This is the problem when we talk too much about ourselves, is that we make it seem like everything's great over here. We're totally fine. We are just doing fine. Don't need you. We've been around for so many years. We're so stable and successful. It can sort of make people feel like, why are you telling me this? Why bother putting this in an email to me? So my words of caution to you is beware of tooting your own horn. Beware of talking too much about yourself that it makes it seem like you don't need any help. And remember, you're talking to people who are already on your email list. This is a warm audience. They love you already. They're already subscribed to your emails. You don't need to spend every newsletter proving your worth to them. Tell them instead how the world is becoming a better place thanks to their involvement. Okay, so by comparison, the best emails are going to use you-focused language. Again, that's where that Bloomerang tool can come in really handy. It can tell you how you're doing on that you-focused versus we-focused language. So we want to invite the reader into the story and show them that there is a clear role for them here. Here is another newsletter by comparison. This is from Ignite Adaptive Sports that works in Eldora. So they say, as we head into 2023 in our 48th season, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of our Ignite family. This holiday season, we really felt the love from you. We appreciate your donations, support, and words of encouragement. All of it makes a life-changing difference for our athletes. Your support fuels us as we head into the season ahead. So this organization is kind of also saying that they have been a community treasure for 48 years. But note how different this feels when it's directed at you, the supporter. So same question. Do you feel motivated to give a donation to support this cause? Or maybe a better question, do you feel like you have a role in this organization if you read this in your inbox? Yes, I'm seeing some good answers in the chat. All right. There is a question in the chat here. We've heard that centering the donor too much instead of the community we serve is not equitable and is saviorism. Do you have thoughts on that? Yeah, this is a great question. So when I say that I want you-focused language, I'm talking about gratitude. I want to make sure that we're telling our supporters that we're so glad they're here. They're an important part of this work. We really appreciate having them around. And we are validating their decision to give to us to join our email newsletter list. We definitely don't want to get into the world of saviorism. We don't want to say, there's so many poor people out there who are just, they're really nothing without you. That's not at all what we want to do. We always want to portray our community in empowering light. Our community members are the ones who are doing the work. They're the ones who are, fill in the blank, pulling themselves out of poverty. They're the ones who are struggling and fighting addiction. They're the ones who are educating themselves. They're the ones, whatever it is, they're the ones doing the work. And we want to make sure that they're getting the credit for that. This you-focused language is meant to be inclusive and to say to the donor, all this really wonderful work that's happening over here in this community, we want you to be a part of it. You have a role here. You're important here. Okay, tip number 4. The worst emails don't stand out from the rest. They have generic subject lines and there's no personalization. They tend to be too text heavy. So I know that for many of us, we get hundreds of emails every week, sometimes hundreds a day. And so if we get an email in our inbox that looks like this, how many of us are excited to read this email? This is one huge block of text. There is no line breaks. There is no button for me to click. There is no bolded text. Oh my gosh, you guys are cracking me up with these comments. Just a bit of light reading. Yeah, I'm seeing people say they might skim this. I'm also seeing people saying I'm out, definitely not. No, thank you. I'd skip it. Thumbs down. Vomit emoji. Yeah, that's same. I have the same reaction to this type of email. Like, really, this email is going to require my unbroken concentration. I'm going to have to set aside some time to sit down and wade through this. And I don't really want to do that. It's a newsletter, for crying out loud. Like, this is not something that I want to take the time to go through. So, this message was about a tragedy that had struck in a community, a natural disaster. And this is from an organization that was addressing that community, trying to help people recover from this disaster. So the part of the email that really jumps out to me is this part that's highlighted in orange text here. So this says, although the pace of recovery continues to be a challenge, it's through this determined collaboration that as of June 25th, the county has announced that a recovery team has been meeting with survivors to provide services and financial support. Is this the most important part of this message? You want me to know that the county has a team that's been meeting? What? Like this, I don't understand why you'd make this the only part of the message that stands out. And I just want to make a note here that if you were someone affected by this natural disaster, I don't think this email is very helpful to you. I don't think, like, you're probably pretty stressed out if you had, were searching for housing because your house was destroyed in the disaster or whatever it might be. And I just want to pause here for a second to highlight this, because you might think that, like, in the case of like something terrible has happened, let's just get any communication out, right? Let's worry about formatting later. Let's worry about making it perfect later. Let's just communicate with people, get the information out there to the people that we want to serve, right? You might work for an organization that's in a similar position sometimes. But I would argue that this is like an even more crucial time to make sure that your message is heard and to make sure that you're saying it in a way that people want to consume it. So there are families in this particular disaster that are suffering, that are under stress. And what if they miss it? What if you can help them, but they don't understand it? They miss the message because maybe English isn't their first language. And so the idea of sitting down to wade through this much text feels overwhelming to them. I like to consider myself to be a Spanish speaker, but if I got a message like this in Spanish, that would stress me out. This is a lot of language to parse through. Or what if one of your audience members is a single mom who has 3 kids and 2 jobs? How is she going to set aside the time? Can she skim through this message while she's waiting in line at the grocery store? Probably not, right? So that's the population that needs to hear your message in this case, and they would miss it because of this text-heavy format, because of the use of big words, because of the lack of skimmability. So I just want to take a moment to make sure that we are reaching the people who need to hear from us the most. Okay, so the best emails by comparison are inviting and easy to consume. They use personalization. They're easily skimmable. So again, think about that single mom in line at the grocery store. Think about somebody pumping gas and looking at your newsletter in the 2 minutes that they have. Can they skim it then? Can you draw them into the content in that short window of time? And ideally, your images have compelling imagery that makes them come alive, or they use plain text for a personal touch. So I don't want to say there's one right format for an email, but let's think about how we're consuming it. Is it short, just text, feels like a nice personal note that someone fired off to us? Or is there really some wonderful imagery in here that draws us in? Okay, so here's an example that I love. Um, Give the Gift of Dance, this Colorado Gives Day. This starts off with a photo of a young woman smiling at us, making eye contact with the camera. Research shows that this type of photo, one person making eye contact with the camera, smiling at you, is an excellent form of imagery. People respond really well to this. So groups of people, if it's like a group shot of 50 people, that doesn't really do much for us. But this, where it feels like we're looking someone in the eyes, this has the power to pull us in. Okay, and this is the email. What I want to point out here is that the length of this email is about the same. I put it into 2 columns just so it would fit on the slide, but it's about the same as the one that we just saw. The difference is the formatting. So there's more line breaks in here. There's more bold text in here. So this is really easily skimmable. It's easy for us to glance at this and to say, huh, this actually looks like content that I want to read. Or if we don't have time to read it, we can still get the gist of the message just by taking a glance at it. So this tells the story of one individual. I was going to school at Monaco Elementary in Commerce City at 7 years old when faculty from Colorado Conservatory of Dance, CCD, visited to teach my class about bugs and insects through dance. Wait, we're learning about bugs with dance? What? This is, okay, you've hooked my attention. I want to know what happens. So this is her story. And she goes on to say, if they hadn't visited my school, I don't know if I would have thought about pursuing dance in any serious way. But because of that one opportunity, I discovered my passion and I joined a community that I love. I'm forever grateful for that one thing that probably changed the course of my life, dance. I hope you'll consider giving to CCD so that more people like me can discover the world of dance. So this is the power of a story, as we already talked about, but also this format of being able to skim through it, being greeted with a photo of a smiling person and thinking, what does this smiling person have to say to me? Oh, great. It's this lovely story that I can, while I'm putting gas in my car, I can just take a look at this and absolutely understand what it is that they're trying to say. Okay, so I've seen some questions in the chat about subject lines. I think this is a really important thing to talk about because this is going to help us get those emails opened in the first place, right? So my advice is to avoid the word newsletter in the subject line. Obviously, this is up to you, but I don't personally feel compelled to read a message that says Spring 2024 newsletter. I know that my time is limited and I'm probably just going to skip that one. So think about using more creative subject lines, again, that mimic the way we talk, that use that simple language. So instead of something like Happy Mother's Day, which is kind of generic, it could be from any organization, doesn't really stand out from the rest. It doesn't talk about what you do or what this email is about. Think about saying something creative, like celebrating moms on 4 legs and 2. So this would be a subject line for that animal sanctuary, right? This is an enthusiastic tone. It kind of piques your curiosity. It also gives you a hint about what the content's about, right? Like we're going to be talking about animals. Those are the moms on 4 legs. Again, instead of something like Happy Valentine's Day, think about something like stories of love made possible by you. We love putting emojis in subject lines, by the way, something for you to consider. This feels more personal and emotional, lets me know that there's going to be a feel-good story inside of this email. I like feeling good. I'll probably read this. Instead of something like this, Sweetie and Burpie's story, I don't know who Sweetie and Burpie are. I'm not really, this doesn't give me any information. It's not necessarily something that's going to compel me to open this message. Consider instead a subject line like this: everything we could do still wasn't enough. This is a vulnerable subject line, makes the reader curious to find out what happened. I'm not saying we want to use clickbait here, but just, something that's relevant to the content of the email that gives them a sense of like, you're going to read a story. It's probably going to be a vulnerable one about something we tried to do and it didn't work. That can really pull people in. Okay. Our fifth and final tip. The worst emails try to convey way too much information. This is another super common thing that I see in the nonprofit newsletter world. The content is just overwhelming, and the reader might not absorb any of it. So I feel like there's two analogies I want to give you. One is I want to imagine that I'm throwing ping pong balls at you. If I throw you 1, 2, 3 little ping pong balls, you'll probably be able to catch them. If I launch 17 of them at you at one time, you're probably not going to catch anything. You're going to be so overwhelmed. Like, what is happening? What is coming at me all at once? And I think a lot of times some of the emails that we send feel like 17 ping pong balls are being fired at you all at once. So let's try to reduce that down to just a few pieces of information that we can more easily consume. The second analogy that I wanted to use is a lot of newsletters, I feel like I call them, it's like a phone call with mom, where like imagine that you're talking to your mom. She wants to know, how was your weekend? What did you do on Sunday? What'd you have for dinner? What about Saturday? What'd you have for breakfast? What'd you do on Friday? And then what about Thursday? What happened then? It's like your mother might be interested in all of the minutia of what happened over the last few days, but your newsletter readers are probably not. So I see a lot of email newsletters from nonprofits come across in this phone call to mom format where we're saying, so our executive director won an award, and then we as an organization, we got this grant, and we also decided to open this new form of programming. And by the way, we're rolling out a new database. This is information that is relevant to your mom, but probably not to your email newsletter subscribers. So let's make sure we're giving them content that's relevant to them. This email that we're looking at right here was sent out by the local voter information organization. And this, in my opinion, is information overload. So my question for you guys is, what do you think is the one most important takeaway from this email? So you're a voter in this county, you're reading this. What is it that you think you need to know? Is it whether or not you know a 17-year-old? That's kind of at the top in red. Is that important? Is it perhaps that if you need a replacement ballot or you want to vote in person, that you can visit a voter service center? Or is it that something's happening on February 28th that I can get a ballot processing center tour? Is this what you want me to take away from this email? I would actually argue that the most important part of this email is this tiny little bit of text right here that says it's too late to mail your ballot. Please drop it off. Can anyone find that line of text in this email? Nope. It's actually the first line up at the top, but it is not highlighted. It is not in red like knowing a 17-year-old is. It's not in big letters. It's buried. So again, make sure that I would argue that all this email needed to do was to throw one ping pong ball at your reader and say, it's too late to mail you in your ballot. Please drop it off. Here's where you can do it. Instead, there were too many, and that piece of information got lost. Okay, so the best emails, by comparison, they avoid this information overload. They aim for 2 to 4 pieces of information, not 24, and they just tell one story. So here's another example that I think does a really great job of this. Note the format of this email, really easy to consume, nice clear line breaks, nice clear call to action button. And this is the part I love. With Growing Homes Housing Stability Program, we provide supplemental housing assistance so families can overcome obstacles and build lifelong stability, resiliency, and well-being. There's one statistic shared in this graphic. 94% of families were stably housed when they exited Growing Home's housing stability program in 2022. That's a pretty compelling statistic in my mind. I understand that this organization is effective at what they do. I understand that they want me to give a donation to transform lives. They've just thrown one ping pong ball at me. So yeah, this is the one statistic. Oops. And I just want to highlight really quickly, as many of you know, this organization works with housing stability. If you wanted to, you could fill up this email with hundreds of statistics related to housing stability, right? Like we could talk about how Metro Denver has the 7th highest typical home value in the nation at over $500,000. Or we could talk about how it has the 10th highest rate of homelessness. We could talk about how 50% of Colorado's homeless population is in the Denver metro area. Veterans are 11% of that population. Women are 34%. You know, like we could drown you in statistics. Or we could get into the details of exactly what it is that Growing Home provides. You know, we could talk about rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, and case management, and et cetera, et cetera. Instead, we kept it simple and focused on one thing that's easy for you to understand. Okay, so in summary, these are the 5 tips. Use simple language, tell a story, use you-focused language, be inviting and easy to consume, and avoid information overload. I want to do a little bit of practice with you guys. I'm going to skip this exercise because we don't have time for it, but I want to encourage you guys to do this at home. So this donor centricity and readability tool, I challenge you to take this text that I used in tip number 1 and see if you can change it into a text that is at an 8th grade, or excuse me, 6th grade reading level. And we're going to skip over that and instead take a look at a newsletter together and score it according to these 5 tips. So here's the 5 that we have. Again, simple language, tell a great story, use you-focused language, be inviting and easy to consume, and avoid information overload. Here's what this newsletter looks like. And this is an exciting new chapter for BCC. Okay, so does anyone know what BCC stands for? I did a quick Google search. It gives us things like Blind Carbon Copy, Boulder Climbing Community, Berkshire Community College, Boston Children's Chorus, Bethesda Community Clinic. This organization is none of those. Some other BCC, but it never tells us what that stands for. So this email has a lot of statistics in here. It talks about how they're increasing their enrollment to nearly 100 students per year, partnering with 13 other delegates, serving more than 10,000 children. They drop more acronyms in here, talking about the County Office of Education. So do we feel like this uses simple language? No. Too many acronyms. We don't know what these stand for. So we're going to give this an X for that one. This does look like part of an executive report. Does this tell a great story? Is there a story of an individual who went on an empowering journey whose life was changed? No. No story here. Does this use you-focused language? I don't see the word you actually anywhere in this message. So that's another no. Is this inviting and easy to consume? Does this big block of text look like it's easy to skim in those couple minutes that we have? No, it looks like text from a grant, looks like text from an executive report. Exactly. So no, I don't think this is very inviting. Does this avoid information overload? I would also say no on this one. Too many numbers in here that I can't really follow. So no. This first email did not do great on our scorecard. It failed all 5. We have some other examples in here that I am going to skip over, but when you get the slides, you can take a look and see some examples of ones that do well as ones that do not so well. I really encourage you guys to take a look at all of these. We're going to go quickly to, I hope I didn't skip, I did not, to Jordan's section of this presentation to bring this back to Colorado Gives.
That was so good. Thank you so much, Patty. And I learned something new every time with you. And Colorado Gives Foundation is at this time taking a look at our own newsletters and seeing how we talk to our different segments of donors and nonprofits and supporters. So this is really helpful on a lot of levels. I really appreciate it. I wanted to give you guys some quick tips on Colorado Gives related to newsletters, just so you can start thinking about how to insert the digital fundraising ask when appropriate in those newsletters. And just to note, it's not always appropriate to have those donation asks in newsletters, but as we get towards Colorado Gives Day, or you're leading up to your gala or event, there might be opportunities for calls to action to donate. All right, Patty, would you mind just moving the slide forward? Thanks. So I wanted to just remind everybody that when you are inserting a call to action in your newsletters or any emails really, to make your donation URL, so what you're linking, the button that says donate in your email, it should link directly to a donation form. So you don't want people to have to click donate and then have to search around on a website to click donate again. You want them to go directly into the donation flow, so it's a really seamless experience for them. We have some tools at Colorado Gives that can help you with that. We have an embeddable donation form as well as an embeddable donation widget, both of which can be embedded on your external website, and that keeps donors on your website, allows them to go to a specific page where they can donate directly, and gives them a really streamlined experience. So just consider that as you are linking your call to action buttons in your emails. Number 2 is use Colorado Gives year-round to familiarize your audience with the opportunities to support you outside of Colorado Gives Day. So of course, Colorado Gives Day is a huge statewide movement, and we are so proud of that. But this is also a year-round platform that we see thousands of nonprofits using for their events, galas, golf tournaments, whatever that looks like for you that's upcoming. The more you expose your audience to the tools that you want them to use throughout the year, the better they are going to get at doing that, and the quicker they're going to take action. And then last thing I just wanted to mention here is you can integrate your Colorado Gives data, so that real-time data that's coming through as someone donates through the Colorado Gives platform to your organization. You can integrate that data so it flows seamlessly to your CRM or other marketing system. So these are just some quick tips on where Colorado Gives may help to uplift what you're already doing in your newsletters and what you're trying to work to improve. I included a couple of slides here just going over some great facts about the free donation widget that you can embed on your external website. And I gave you an example as well. I also wanted to share on the next slide what it looks like when someone is embedding a form on your external website. And then the last 2 slides here, all of which you'll have access to, outline the integrations related to Colorado Gives and how you can start that. And then some other resources that I just wanted to remind you about. So of course, we have the Colorado Gives Day 2023 Toolkit, which has a lot of great branding and suggestions. And don't you worry, for 2024, we're going to have even more suggestions for how you can insert Colorado Gives Day appeals into your newsletters. We have a library of digital fundraising webinars. So if you haven't checked those out yet, we cover a lot within those wide-ranging topics. And of course, Patty's featured several times because we love inviting her to share her expertise. And then last thing I'll mention is we can have a one-on-one meeting. If you need to talk through Colorado Gives, where it fits into your plan, how it can serve your organization, you can schedule a call with me, and I would be happy to talk strategy with you. So with that, and with our, we're at time, but we had a lot of great discussion. Patty, if it's okay with you, do you mind if you saw one or two questions that you wanted to pull out of chat just to take us through the end of this webinar? Was there anything that popped out to you as something you wanted to make sure we addressed?
Yeah, I saw a couple great questions. One is about frequency. So how often should you send a newsletter? And the answer I always give to that is, what do you feel is sustainable for you and your team? I think consistency is important rather than a certain frequency. So if you feel like quarterly newsletters is all you can manage, great. If you feel like monthly newsletters is a much better fit for you, awesome. If you want to send a newsletter once every 6 weeks, that's fine too. Maybe you are an organization that puts on events, and so you have a ton of events that you want to talk about, and so you want to send a newsletter once a week. Great. I don't think there's any wrong answer here. I think it has to do with, do you have news to share? And what's the frequency that you feel like you can keep up with the man hours that you have? Pick something that works for you and stick with that. And don't feel like you need to send monthly newsletters if you just don't feel like you have the bandwidth for that. Another question that I had was about sort of including a PDF that would have like more information. And so you'd send a newsletter and say, click here to read more. I just want to emphasize that click rates on emails are super low. So an excellent click rate is like 3%. So that means that 97% of the people who get that newsletter are never going to click a single link in it. So if you're burying all of the important information on a blog post or on a PDF that's somewhere else that's not in the email itself, most people, the vast majority of people, are not going to read it. So I always recommend put the meat of the story in the email itself. Whatever you want people to know, whatever you want them to read, put it directly in the email, give people the opportunity to read it there. Some people might click forward to read more on your website, to read that PDF that you put together for them, but assume that most people are not going to do that and just put everything in the email. There's so many other great questions.
No, this has been so wonderful, and y'all have been so active and so hilarious in the chat. So thank you. We are at time for today, but I put in the chat the link if you want to talk coloradogives.org with me. If you want to talk anything marketing, fundraising, nonprofit strategy, of course I'm available, but I definitely suggest meeting with Patty. Because her team is awesome, and this is what they talk about all day, every day with folks. We'll also make sure, I'll take a look at all the chat, make sure we answered all your questions, and if you get a direct email from me, it's just because I want to make sure that all your questions are answered. I really appreciate everybody joining us for today. I know you all have busy work schedules and busy lives, so thank you for taking some time with us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And thank you, Patty, of course.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.